Hey guys, today I want to talk about the basics of redstone. I'm going to start out super simple, just exactly what it is, and then I'll work up to some basic applications. So redstone is kind of like electricity in real life. If you're completely new and you have no idea what it is, that's a pretty good example. You have a source of power, which can kind of be like represented by like a battery. So here's our source, this torch. You have a wire, which can be represented by redstone. And then you have something to power, like this redstone lamp, and you can see it gives off a little bit of light. So this is basically redstone right here. You have source, connection, and object being powered. So there are here are the few of the most common items you'll see. These are all ways of powering. So we can tell redstone's being powered when it lights up and emits these particles. So you can see the pressure plate just by walking on it. We have the switch here. If you can obviously see how that works. And then we have the torch, which always is on, which has a which is constantly emitting power. Alright, so now that you have a basic understanding what redstone is, let's show some of the simple tasks you can achieve. So we have this pile of sand, which we all know gravity applies to sand. So when we activate this piston here, pushes it out, comes back in, and the sand falls down. So if we were to just do this a few times, you can see the piston from this video popping out and in. So when pistons get power, they like pop out like that. Now here we have a simple door, and this also uses a lever to power. So when we hit the switch, it opens up. We have a little doorway here. These are some of the really simple things you can do with redstone. Alright, now, a lot of times in redstone there's going to be a problem. It's not always going to be like super clean where you just have an open space and they're right next to each other. Sometimes, for example, we have a wall here. Now, let's imagine this is like a wall of your house. So, right now we could just go around the wall like this. But, you know, that defeats the purpose. We are pretending that this is a room right here. So it's a closed off area, and we need to travel through the wall. Now, of course, you could just dig a hole through the wall, and now we have achieved connection. But that looks ugly, and now you can see there's redstone coming right through the wall. So what you can actually do is there's a piece of redstone stuff that actually allows you to essentially power a block. So this is a redstone repeater, and this has a ton of uses other than what we're doing here. But right now we can see it's going through the wall. Alright, so we're powering on the other side. So let's just kind of take away everything here, except for this one block. So now this block becomes part of the circuit, so if we destroy this, it breaks. And also what this allows us to do is we can branch off all over the place, and we actually have power here. So we can put this and we can put this on top, and now we can see all these are lit. So this block becomes power, and it emits redstone energy in all directions. Now another way we can use redstone repeaters is in this case. Now we have our source here, and all the way over here we have what we're powering. So redstone will only travel 15 blocks before it dies off. So if we look over here, we can see it's a nice bright orange. Kind of goes to a red and then darkens down until it's this really dark red. And we can see right here the particles aren't emitting anymore. So now what we can do is placing a redstone repeater down resets the current, so now we can move another 15 blocks before it dies again. So it's as if you have like a torch or a lever right here. So you can see it's a nice bright orange again. And this is completely independent of how close or far we are away from the lever over there. And now we have connection. So if we go back to just normal redstone, it won't make it. If we put this in, it'll make it. Alright, so the last primary function of a redstone repeater is to add delay, a time between energy getting from the source to the object. So if we just make a normal path, we can see from hitting the lever, this turns on pretty much instantly. But by adding a repeater in, we can actually set the setting here. We can add a bunch of delay. And now if you pay close attention, you can see it's gonna take a second for it to turn on. So we could see there's a delay. And we want to go ahead and add more. We can see there's a nice long delay. Alright, so a redstone, when you first put a redstone repeater down by itself in its default position, it is at its shortest. So if we look really close, we can see there's a tiny delay. It really isn't that noticeable. It's only a few frames. And as we increase the distance just by right clicking on it, it gets more and more delay. If you want to go exact time here, at the default it's at 0.1 seconds of delay. Second setting it's at 0.2 seconds of delay. Third setting it's at 0.3. Fourth setting it's at 0.4. And then we can add a second one. If we go on max setting on both, we have a total of 0.8 seconds of delay. If we want exactly 1 second, we can do a third one on the second setting, and now we have exactly 1 second. Alright, so the next thing we're going to look at is redstone torches. Now initially you might think of them as just a way of having a constant power, unchanging, it'll always be keeping this on. And you might not find much purpose for that, since a lever does the exact same thing, except for you can easily cut it off when you need to. But redstone torches actually have a lot of importance in more complicated redstone circuits. Alright, so let's look at this. Now here's our power source, all the way down here, and here's what we're trying to achieve. Now, one way of doing this would be building a staircase all the way up, a spiral staircase all the way up, which would work, yes, but it wouldn't be very efficient, and it looks kind of ugly, as you can see just by starting off. And it's much more resource intensive if you're on survival or whatever, than another method we can use by utilizing redstone torches. So before we get into this, let's just look at how redstone torches can work together. So as we went over before, when power is going inside of a block with a redstone repeater behind it, this block becomes energized, essentially. We can have branch off power and use it to power objects. We can also use this to power torches. Powering torches causes them to turn off. So if we have power on the torch, we can see it turns off, the flame or whatever has gone out, and it no longer will power anything. So we have nothing from it. Now when we turn off the power to the block becomes de-energized, so the torch loses power, and now we can see it's turned back on and it's powering our object. So I could just use an example of this. Here we have lights, and just by one switch we can control both lights, and you can see they switch. Alright, now let's look at how we can use this to reach point A and point B without a clumsy looking staircase. So we take the redstone and go right underneath it with it, put a block at the end. So now this is right underneath, and this block is energized. If we place a torch at the top, we can see it turns off. Place another block on top, we can see the torch now is on. This one's off, and on again. So now we can see the redstone lamp is now on. We turn the switch, it then turns off. So we can see we have a really clean way of going completely vertically with redstone, which would be impossible with any other method. So this is just one way you can use torches as far as powering them to achieve better redstone. Another thing I forgot to mention about redstone repeaters is they act as a diode. If you're not familiar with what a diode is, it only allows power to go through one side. So if we turn this torch on over here, we can see it gets powered and it stops right there. The repeater won't allow it to go any further. If we go over to this side and turn this torch on, we can see it powers the immediate block to it and continues on through. This also works from coming from the sides. You can't power redstone repeaters from the side. And this might seem like a bad thing at first, but it's actually extremely helpful. Alright, so before we move any further, I would probably be suggested just to go in the game yourself and test out some of the things I showed you, and kind of experiment around. If you have any questions, just figure that, just kind of experiment with yourself to see how things work together. Alright, so now I've laid out pretty much all of the ways of powering redstone. These are all the sources where power comes from. So we have this block here, and this is essentially the same thing as a redstone torch. It's really similar because it just powers in all directions. It has a constantly is releasing energy, and there's no really way of turning it off. As we can see, we can place redstone anywhere around it, and it will power it. We were familiar with the redstone torch, the lever, pressure plates. Now, besides the fact that they camouflage better in certain environments, there is a major difference between these pressure plates. Obviously, we can activate both of them just by walking on them, but stone pressure plates will not activate by having an item thrown on them. So if we listen carefully, we don't hear the click when we throw the redstone on there, but if we go over to the wood one, we can. So these are better for certain scenarios, and these are better for other scenarios, depending on whether or not you're going to have items fall on them. The difference between a wooden and a stone button is both of them get pressed the same, and they both last just as long, which is exactly 1 second. If you were wondering, this holds for exactly 1 second, and same as this one. But we can actually use a bow on the wooden one and press it in with an arrow, unlike the stone one, which has no effect on the stone. Alright, so this last clip is me speed building these automatic redstone doors, and these will open and close automatically by standing on the pressure plates in front of the doors. This is a really really simple design, really practical, so you can copy exactly what I'm doing in the video, build this on your own world, and then you can look at it, tweak it, and reverse engineer it to kind of figure out and get a better understanding of what is going on. Alright, so I hope this video was helpful for you guys. If it was, don't forget to leave a like. If you want to see more redstone stuff, my channel has a bunch of videos on tutorials how to build other cool redstone stuff, and thanks for watching.